You're listening to the Reinvest Podcast, where each Tuesday we will show you how to reclaim, reconnect, and refocus your life by bringing you the top real estate professionals in the industry. We'll pull back the curtain so you can implement these tools and tactics to build generational wealth. Your hosts, Garrett Gatton and Seth Ciminillo. Hey, Reinvest listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. Today we have the opportunity to explore a different niche in real estate investing that will very well be applicable to your investment portfolio and maybe even your own property or home. So
you're leaving money on the table if you don't listen to this episode.
Oh, that's good clickbait.
You're leaving money on the table because there are different ways to maximize the NOI on your property that you haven't even thought of. You've even thought of it.
Well, we're going to expand your mind today, and we're going to do that with none other than Joseph Woodbury. Joseph, how are you, man?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
So, Joseph, you're the CEO and janitor at neighbor.com. No, in tongue in cheek. So
I feel like that domain name is up there with like CoStar just bought homes.com.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like you're up there in that realm of domain names. Was that challenging to get that domain name?
Yeah, this was 6 years ago, and the guy who owned it had owned it since the 90s and just sat on it.
Whoa.
We reached out over and over again, no response. Finally, after a year and a half, 2 years of trying, we got him to respond and worked out a deal, and now we're neighbor.com.
What were some of the other domain names that you were going after? Because you probably didn't just fixate on that one. There was probably like 6, and you're like, whichever one of these hits is what we'll go with.
No, we fixated on that one, and we were like, we must have this. It's just so perfect. So we were kind of like Lyft is spelled with a Y.
Yeah.
Prior to this, we were neighbor spelled with a Y, which is no good. And we just think this neighbor concept is so powerful. You know, we'll talk about what we do in a second, but that's ultimately what we wanted to be, is this platform that connected people across the community with their neighbors to help each other out. And so we just had to have this neighbor.com domain name.
That's incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah, anybody who's a millennial can appreciate. I was just talking with Casey, and it's like digital real estate, having a domain name, you know, and you don't think about that. I mean, obviously this guy had the vision to buy it and hold on to it for all that time. I'd love to know what his ROI was on you guys purchasing that from him. Maybe it's painful for you to even calculate those numbers, but what I love about today's episode, Joseph, and what you guys are doing at neighbor.com is you are a disruptor. You guys are kind of using that democratization strategy, and you're applying it in a really niche way in real estate. So give us a little bit about your company. Give us the inception, kind of where'd the vision come from?
Yeah, so Neighbor is a nationwide storage platform. We're actually the only storage company in the United States that operates in all 50 states at this point. And we do it by, instead of building storage facilities, we work with real estate owners. And this could be homeowners. If you own a home, you could rent out space in and around your home, your garage, your driveway, your shed. It could be business owners, like a small business, maybe a gym or a nail salon that has extra space, or even a large real estate portfolio owner that owns properties in 50 cities nationwide. And we'll work with you to tap this $50 billion storage industry and earn income to your properties. It got started, as my co-founder gets all the credit for this. He needed storage. He and his wife had just gotten married. And a week after they got married, they flew down to South America to work for this humanitarian org. So busy time. And he looked into getting a storage unit. And just like everybody, all the storage facilities close by were totally full. That's a nationwide problem, by the way. The average occupancy nationwide right now is 95% in storage facilities. Highest occupancy rate, I think, of any real estate asset class. And he was going to have to drive a half hour over to the next community just to find one with vacancy. They were going to charge him, $300-400 a month, which is a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
So what he did is he got creative, and he called a friend up and asked if he could put his items in his garage, stored his items in his friend's garage. And 4 months later, when he went to pick his items up, He
You're
just
still
thought,
there. I was kidding.
yeah, he was like, this was such a better experience. I felt so much more peace of mind knowing my items were in a nice, clean garage
Mm.
in a neighborhood I trusted than in one of those dirty storage facilities on the outskirts of town.
And
Plus,
close
I
by.
saved a ton of money. Yeah, and it's close by. Why doesn't everyone do this? There's got to be empty space in every neighborhood in the country. Why isn't there a platform that can connect these people? So that's where it all got started.
Wow.
That's fascinating. So, I'm sure even just off camera as we were talking about your company before we jumped on, were you surprised about once you took this to market, who found use in this kind of concept and application?
We thought this was going to be a small project, right? Like our intention was not to make this the only storage facility that's in all 50 states. We just thought it would be a great way for people to earn some extra income. And we were kind of working on it on the side. And we were amazed by the adoption. Turns out people love making side hustle income. And this really resonated with people because unlike the other platforms, unlike Uber or DoorDash or Instacart, this doesn't require work. I mean, those platforms, you got to go drive around.
Right.
Even Airbnb, which is kind of the most passive platform out there, you have to have enough capital to invest in, Airbnbs. Two, it's high maintenance. There's a new guest every day, and you got to clean up after them. A lot of people hire management companies to manage it. And Neighbor kind of came on the scene, and you get all these homeowners and real estate investors who are like, I can get a renter and they're going to show up like once every 6 months and they're going to stay for years. And I'm going to get this passive recurring income that I don't have to do anything for. And that's, I think, what really resonated. And it just kind of took off from there.
So can you give us some context? What is your background and maybe what's your partner's background? And what gave you the confidence even to tackle a project like this and develop software to coordinate this?
Confidence, I'd say it came from a lot of like naivete, not knowing which, I saw a quote the other day that said, we did this not because it's easy, but because we thought it would be easy.
Oh, funny. Oh, wow.
That's a good one.
You just described my parenting journey.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that resonates. I've got 6 kids,
Dude. Hey, we're having our 6th kid. So
wow.
How old's your oldest?
7.
7. Oh, dude, my oldest is 8. So yeah, you have no gray hair and you've got a great smile. Tell me what your secret is.
Great wife. That's my
there
secret.
you go.
Amen to that. So, but yeah, that's a good quote though. So you guys there was an ignorance level that needed to be in place for you to tackle this.
Yep. So my background, I worked for, an investment bank and then a private equity firm and then went and did consulting for a consulting firm called Bain & Company. Was headed off on like the boring, professional services track. Preston, my co-founder, he's the creative one that had this idea. And I remember catching up with him and he was telling me about it. And I was like, that's the best idea I've ever heard in my whole life. I thought all these marketplace ideas were taken. I thought we had disrupted all the things. But as I looked into storage, I'm like, holy crap, this industry, the industry's now built more storage facilities in the United States than we have McDonald's, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, Burger King's, Wendy's, Walmart's, Home Depot's, and Costco's combined.
Wow.
So it's storage is this sleeper. Like it does 10 times the revenue that the entire taxi and limo industry that Uber and Lyft disrupted does 10 times that amount of revenue on an annual basis. That's how big storage is.
That's crazy.
And it's like no one's provided a good solution here. It's like such a painful, old, archaic industry. And as Preston told me about it, I was like, this is perfect. This is absolutely the place a marketplace belongs.
So as you guys kind of modeled that, looked at that, the closer you got to a proof of concept with it, if the self-storage industry is a $50 billion industry, what market share were you like, if we could capture this percentage, we would be
Well, I'll give you some numbers on that. So it's very fragmented. It's 50 billion in terms of revenue. It's like a half a trillion in terms of value.
of real estate value?
Uh, so public storage, $50 billion publicly traded company. They have about 7% market share.
Wow.
Extra space storage, $30 billion publicly traded company. They have like 3% market share. And then it just long tails after that. And 85% of the industry is just mom and pops.
Wow. 85% of the industry. So that shows you how unconsolidated this asset class is.
And there's a reason for that. I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of investor listeners.
Yeah.
And from an investor standpoint, the price required by a lot of these mom and pops to purchase it, because you ask the question, like, why doesn't someone come in with a big private equity firm and just roll this up and consolidate the industry?
Right.
And the reason is because these mom and pop owners that are rolling off, 300K or 500K in cash flow that has no risk profile to it. I mean, this is not like hospitality where you can have these big swings where
Yeah.
it's just a total dive one year. Storage is the most stable, predictable industry. In 2008, everything collapsed by 40 to 60% in the real estate industry. Storage grew by 5%.
Wow. That is the delta between everything else and that time period in the market is crazy. So wait, were you alluding to the fact that there was no motivation for these mom and pops to sell? And so it's hard to consolidate these and get them bought?
In many cases, you'll go to a mom and pop and say, I want to buy you. And they're like, okay, here's my price. And it's like a 14, 15-year payback.
Right.
And so that's a long time frame to be able to deploy the capital because it's an annuity payment. It's a perfectly competitive. I mean, you're just purchasing cash flows. There's very little arbitrage opportunity. And so I think that's resulted in a lot of the fragmentation. Extra space storage has been the most active player, I think, in trying to roll it up. They've been aggressively, they've been aggressive in the past in trying to acquire. And again, they've got 3% market share after decades of aggressively rolling up.
Wow.
So you said that your company can kind of be broken down into two applications, residential and commercial. Can you kind of explain maybe both of those prongs to how this looks in the marketplace?
Yeah. So like the residential, I think about that very much like Airbnb. I mean, these are homeowners that have extra space that they're not using. It's their garage, it's their driveway, and we're connecting them with a literal neighbor. So their neighbor comes and stores their boat or their camper trailer on the side of your house. You earn, $3,000 to $5,000 a year, totally passive income on your property. And then we've got multiple types of residential. There's the person that owns their home. There's also like the investor. We've had investors, they own 10 rental properties and they onboard us onto one and they're like, holy crap, this increased my cash on cash return by, 30, 40% because on a net basis, I was paying $2,000 on the mortgage and I made $2,300 a month in rent. And so my net is 300 and then neighbor comes along and I'm earning another 300 or 400 in net off the property. Now I doubled my net returns on each property.
And what would they be? I mean, what would a landlord be renting out? I mean, just because, I would assume their tenant, if they have a garage, would be using the garage and the driveway. But is it maybe adding a parking pad on their property for someone to park a boat or an RV? Or is it they put a shed in the back of the property and they let a local person rent out their shed? Or what kind of profile are they looking at?
That's right. And a lot of times that pad already exists and the renter's just not using it. And so they just carve it out, they start renting it out. Sometimes they'll even split with the tenant and say like, hey, you take care of it, you kind of receive the person, I'll split the proceeds with you. We have had people invest and like lay down gravel. We had one real estate investor that I'm familiar with had a large amount of land behind the property. He was earning like 1,500 or so on the actual rental itself. and he built out like a little parking lot on the extra land behind it, and he's earning like $50,000 a year on that. So like
Wow.
so much more, almost what is that, 5x more than he was earning on the rental property itself. And then we'll get some of those individuals, they just start investing in neighbor properties. They're like, I'm not even going to add this onto my neighbor property. I'm doing the math, and like we're based out of Utah, so I'll give you a Utah example. 500K maybe gets you a small townhome in Utah.
That's
And
incredible.
that could yield you in rents, um, call it $2,000, $2,500 a month.
Wow.
Um, if so, what is that on an annual basis? That's like 25, 30K a year.
Mm-hmm.
You could short-term rental that thing on Airbnb and maybe earn 40K a year, maybe 45. Like
Mm-hmm.
Airbnb was a shockwave to the industry because all of a sudden you could increase your yields by
Right.
sometimes 30% on a
Yeah.
property. Well, they'll start doing the math and they're like, wait a second, I could go buy a vacant lot for, an acre to 2 acres for 500K in Utah. And that on neighbor would yield me 100K a year. So
Hmm.
we're talking 3x what a rental property would do. And then you'll get individuals that just start investing in like neighbor dedicated properties. That's all on the residential side.
So I mean, that example of buying some vacant land and then using it, at what point do you kind of step across outside of a purview for the use of a property and encroach on, like, now you're using it for a different zoning? Do you
Yeah, so
understand?
yeah, I completely understand. So the residential, where it's residential property, to your point, typically no issue there. Um, if we don't get a lot of people that like construct a storage facility, whereas you'd really run into kind of the zoning issues.
Mm-hmm.
Parking, we do have a lot of people that invest in that, and that typically you have a lot more flexible zoning with that. You do have to look at it on a city by city basis, though. Like
Mm-hmm.
every city is different. Sometimes people will buy a lot that's maybe closer to a commercial district where it's kind of mixed use zoning sort of
Yeah.
thing. Um, and
So are
again, the
you?
vast majority of these people are just people that own a home. They don't have to worry about the zoning. Their home is their property.
Right.
They can use it for ancillary uses like this. And then we've got the commercial side where oftentimes they're already zoned.
Right.
So you said that you'll have people invest in neighbor properties. Does that mean that Neighbor as a company is purchasing properties and using this model just kind of in-house, and you're like almost like syndicating these opportunities, or?
Nope, this is just them, just like an Airbnb. I mean, Airbnb doesn't own any of those properties, but you get like investors that, it
Will buy
started
a
out with
property for the
people renting
purpose of an
out.
I
Airbnb.
see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So they're
exactly.
buying the property with the purpose of it being a neighbor.com property.
Yeah. I
That's
gotcha.
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
So, I mean, out of curiosity, do you have any clients or users that actually own storage facilities that use neighbor.com to rent out their storage facilities, like storage units?
It's not a core category for us, but yeah, we do in almost every state.
Hmm.
So that we don't disallow it, right? Like if you have a storage facility, you can list on the site. It's not a big segment for us, but it's kind of a hack that a lot of use. They're like, holy cow, Neighbor is this great way to always maintain myself at 95% utilization, and they do all the work for me, and their tools are actually way better than the SaaS software I'm paying for
Hmm.
because we actually built them in the last 5 years. We didn't build them in 1980. And it's kind of this like there's some more forward thinking operators that are
Yeah.
kind of using us to hack and make their storage facility super successful. But we're mostly focused on taking space that wasn't built for storage, that's just sitting there empty, unused, and recycling it for
Wow.
storage.
So let me ask you this, because this would be my concern if I was a homeowner and I was planning on renting out my garage. I mean, that's me taking on liability of someone else's car being parked in my garage or something. So, I mean, what kind of protections do the people that are renting these properties out, if they're using their property as a neighbor property? I mean, is there liability waivers that are being signed, or is there is it something that can be added onto the insurance for the homeowner?
Yeah, so this is our job as a marketplace. Ultimately, we don't actually sell storage. We're a storage platform, but it's our hosts that sell storage, and we sell trust. And so just like Airbnb, we have a $1 million host guarantee that you protects you as a host. Your liability is basically like running a business. So that way, if there's like the renter slips and falls or something on your property, like
Mm-hmm.
we're protecting you and guaranteeing you there. In addition, renters can purchase property protection plans from us. I think we're the only storage facility that I'm aware of. We're the only storage company that will give you up to $50,000 in coverage for your items.
Wow.
There's storage facilities out there that offer stuff, but it's like $3,000 or $5,000. Our policies go up to 50,000. And so then the renter can have peace of mind there. We also do a ton of vetting, like every host is ID verified. Every renter has to submit the full list of everything they'll be storing. The host gets to review that before they approve the reservation. So there's a lot of mutual buy-in on this.
Mm-hmm.
And all communications happen through the platform. We built out like a whole messaging system. So it's as safe and seamless as you could want it. In fact, I think it's a heck of a lot safer. If you look at the FBI stats on self-storage break-ins versus residential break-ins, there's like a 10x difference.
Wow.
Just some stats. 1 in 10 storage facilities in the United States is broken into every single year. 1 in 10. Because they're
Wow.
just targets. I mean, they're in these industrial parks. There's
Mm-hmm.
items there. Most of them have hardly any security. Whereas residential, there's people there, there's dogs, there's alarm systems, there's all these
Yeah.
things. The crime rate in residential areas is so low. So your items are, even if it wasn't for the $50,000 in protection that you can get, your items are just safer on
Yeah.
neighbor than they are in any storage facility.
Well, and you know
So
what the moral of the story is
yeah.
there? The moral of the story is don't live in a storage unit because then you're setting yourself up for failure. You're just asking for a break-in.
So let me kick this scenario at you. Somebody parks their car in my garage because I'm renting it out a neighbor, and my kid goes out there and they're getting a scooter out of the garage and they scratch this car or something. Would that just be on me as the owner? I would cover that cost, or is there any type of insurance that would cover me in the case that it was an extreme repair?
Yeah. So the only thing that you as a host bear liability for on our platform is your damage. So like you as a host are responsible to not damage the item. But other than that, like that's where we step in. So
Okay.
in that scenario, like you'd be responsible to kind of keep that item safe
Safe.
from you.
Or your
But
kids.
like if something else happened to it, if
The house
you
caught on
know
fire.
exactly,
Tree falls on the
or
garage.
yep, or someone did happen to break in, or we would step in. And
Okay.
if someone purchased a property protection plan, even if your kid did damage it, if for whatever reason, like we couldn't get you to make it whole and pay for it, we would still step in. Like our property protection plan protects that renter in all scenarios,
Wow.
pretty much for damage of that item.
That's
Yeah, that's
incredible.
pretty cool.
So, and
Yeah.
just to make this connection for our investor audience, you've had investors bring their whole portfolio to you and say, monetize our unused space.
That's right. So that's the commercial, I mentioned all the residential stuff and kind of the residential investors and the residential homeowners, but then there's the commercial side of our business. And this is where we work with people that are invested in commercial property. So this could be office, this could be retail, this could be multifamily. And I'll give a few examples. We work with most of the billion-dollar retail REITs in the country at this point, greater than 50%. And a retail REIT will say, okay, we've got two types of space. First, there's always that suite in the back that like no one wants to touch, and we haven't been able to rent it out in 5 years. And they'll onboard that onto our platform. We'll rent it out for storage. In addition, they've got all this excess parking that the city made them build, and we'll rent that out for vehicle storage. And these REITs are earning, anywhere from 6 to 7 figures on an annual basis in ancillary income. And then you could have a multifamily owner. The second or third largest multifamily owner in the United States is Big Neighbor Host on our platform. And these are, by multifamily, I'm talking apartment complexes with, where the whole portfolio is tens of thousands of doors nationwide. And they also have storage lockers that they actually built for the tenants. Most of these big multifamily, they've got storage lockers in the units, and the tenants don't really use them. They're 25-30% occupied. We'll take all those, we'll rent them out to the community, get them to 90% occupancy.
Whoa.
We'll also
people will go in these apartment complexes and just to rent out like a locker.
Yeah, and when I'm talking a locker, it's usually like a cage system where, it's a 5x5 or a 10x10 cage that they've built. Sometimes even garages. They've got like a row of garages that you can rent, and their tenants haven't rented all of them, so we'll just rent out those garages to the public.
Yeah.
And then we've also got parking. They've always got extra parking. Right. And just that parking alone is usually enough to earn a 7 figures in income across the country.
High density areas.
And when they go to investors and they're like, hey, our IRR just increased by X amount, they don't even have to tell them it was Neighbor. All of a sudden they look like a genius, and people are like, what, did you increase rents or something? And they're like, well, it's our secret sauce.
It's our public proprietary strategy.
Yeah.
Right. We're just good at operating.
Yeah.
That's funny. Wow. So before we transition into some of our show segments, I want to ask you this question. What is the cost differential between a 10x10 storage unit at a traditional storage facility versus what people list these spaces equivalent on the platform for?
It depends on if you're residential or commercial. It also depends on the city and all that stuff. But on average, I'd say our storage tends to be 30-40% cheaper than a traditional storage.
So it's very competitive, and that's what would be enticing for somebody. That between having a personal connection potentially with someone, giving them the peace of the mind. You're saving money on an alternative as a consumer, and then you're also talking to a person in a more statistically safe scenario.
Yeah, it's cheaper, it's safer, it's closer to where you're located, and it's more environmentally friendly. I mean, that alone is you think the most people talk about like agriculture and airlines when they're talking about environmental emissions. Most people don't understand that 40% of global emissions are just construction and like concrete and steel. It's buildings. And you look at what a storage facility is, it's concrete and steel. And those are the two ingredients in a storage facility. And we build $5 billion worth of storage in the United States every year. Neighbor is so much more environmentally friendly, where we're taking space that has already been built. It's already sitting there. No one is using it. It's valueless. And we're turning it into an asset that reduces the amount of storage that we need to build elsewhere.
So walk us through the process of someone gets on board with your platform. Do you guys market the property? Who collects the rent? How does the rent get to the owner? And then how do you guys get paid at the end of the day?
Yeah, that again, this is kind of our job as a platform. So you onboard, we're going to take you through a questionnaire. We're going to ask you a bunch of questions about your property. It takes 10 to 15 minutes. Then we're going to you're going to submit your property. That's going to get manually reviewed by an agent on our platform. Every single space on our platform has been reviewed. We're going to ID verify you, and then we're going to publish your space. We take care of bringing you a renter. They book through our space. We process all payments, so it's all seamless. Renter pays through us. You link your bank account. We direct deposit to your bank account every single month. Again, it's this like recurring passive income. We make money the same way Airbnb makes money, which is you set your price. You can set your price at whatever you want as a host. Of course, we give you a recommended price because we have the best storage pricing data in the country of anyone, where we say, oh, you're in this suburb of Atlanta listing this type of space with these amenities. Here's what if you charge this amount, you're 90% more likely to get rented.
Yeah.
But ultimately you get to set your price. We then take whatever price you set and we charge the renter that plus a service fee.
Yeah.
And we make the service fee and you make what you asked for. And so like you're happy, the renter's happy because they're getting it cheaper than storage. And we make our money.
And then at the end of the year, do you guys produce some sort of tax form for the users?
Yeah, so you'll get a 1099K as a host. Currently, the requirements for 1099K is you have to earn more than $20,000 and have 200 transactions. So a number of our hosts get 1099Ks. That standard is moving down to $600 next year, I believe. So even our smaller users will get 1099Ks. But regardless of whether you get a 1099K from us or not, we have a whole portal page that gives you your entire year's transaction history, all the fees associated with it, and so you can file your taxes.
Wow. That's wild. That's wild.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're going to jump into our smaller pocket segment here. So, Joseph, go ahead and tell us about a deal. Maybe it was a personal transaction for you that went wrong, or maybe it was something within the business as you guys have gone on this journey to start this business. Maybe it was something that went wrong. What happened? And then, more importantly, what did you learn from it?
Yeah, so about 4 years ago, we rolled out this awesome new feature on the platform. And, we'd been building this thing for 4 months. It was a feature that was very successful on Airbnb's platform. It was basically their instant book feature. And we were close. One of our board members sits on the board of Airbnb as well. And so we kind of had insight into how well it worked for them. And we were so excited for it to do similar things for our platform.
Mm-hmm.
So we rolled it out. We pushed this really hard, all sorts of email campaigns. Our hosts responded very well. We got like 80% adoption on the feature where Instant Book was live across our platform. And it was an absolute complete disaster. We had all of these renters that were instantly approved and trying to move in. And yet, again, this was 4 years ago, so we were just in a handful of states. Today we're in every city in all 50 states. We've worked out all the kinks. But 4 years ago, it turns out that conversation that people were having before the reservation was extremely important. And they worked out all the kinks and the details in that conversation before they moved in. And we tried to treat a different platform's feature the same as it would work on our platform. And what I learned is that every experience is different. And you really have to put yourself in the customer's shoes. And today we've brought that feature back and it's very successful, but it took us like 3 years to bring that feature back.
Wow.
Because we had to go automate all those things that people were doing in conversations. And now that we've taken care, and now that everything's taken care of up front, you can get automatically approved. But to do it so early 4 years ago when we hadn't taken care of all the things that people were doing ad hoc in conversations, it resulted in renters like showing up to a space and like the item not fitting, or it was just like these very poor experiences.
Yeah.
And so we quickly rolled it back. We like killed the feature.
Yeah. Man, I bet that was a stressful couple of weeks or months there.
Joseph's in the server room just pulling cords out of like the little storage banks and stuff. Like, shut it down. No,
that's a good learning experience.
That was good. Yeah. No, thank you for the transparency on that. Sometimes we'll ask our guests, like, what'd you learn or what was your mistake? And they're like, our mistake was that we've been too successful and we had to it's like, okay, guy.
No, what it reminds me of is that even strategies in multifamily, you kind of look at someone else's strategy or what you perceive their strategy is. And then obviously if someone's successful, it's like just copy what they do. But there's a learning curve. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like you can't just clone something and think it's going to work when maybe you don't have your back end set up. And that's something you can't determine looking on the outside at someone else's process. So,
and even I'd point out, like, even from from like time period to time period. I think a lot of operators today will look at what made a multifamily portfolio successful 10 years ago, or what made an office portfolio successful 10 years ago, and they'll try to duplicate that.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not what makes a multifamily or office portfolio successful today.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the defaults that are happening. Like we're in a
I
totally
know.
different interest
Yeah.
rate environment than we've been for the last 10 years. And you have a lot of individuals that are just like throwing up their hands and kind of walking away from the loan and letting the bank take over.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you need to pursue a different operating playbook and not be so locked into your core business. You need to treat the property as a property that can earn income. And you don't care whether that NOI comes from office or parking or storage or multifamily. Like you need to open your horizon and say, how
Yeah.
can I make this a profitable property?
Yeah.
And those types of operators, they're crushing it and they're winning. They're going to come out the other side of this, owning their assets. And the old school people that just can't get out of their like locked in mode, they're going to walk out of this with a lot of lost value where they just walked away from money that they had already invested.
Wow. Yeah, that's well said. All right. Well, this is a good segue into what we call our little nugget. So, Joseph, this is the part of our show where you give us one practical takeaway, piece of advice. Could be a hack, could be something very tried and true that you operate your life by, your business by, that our investors and our audience can apply to themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I shared this on the last segment, but I'd caution you to take whatever advice I have because like whatever has worked for us isn't necessarily going to be what's worked for you. Maybe that's advice number one is like figure it out for yourself and do the hard work. But I think something that can be broadly applicable is we've gotten this to be in all 50 states by putting in just a ton of work. And there is absolutely everyone's always trying to chase the quick dollar.
Right.
And like, how can I make a quick return? And there is just no replacement from like piece by piece building something and working a ton to do it. Elon Musk's, he likes to say, if I work 100 hours a week and you work 40 hours a week, then I'm going to accomplish in 4 months what takes you a year to accomplish. And I just think that's true. I mean, there's kind of a conservation. It's like a law of physics. Like there's just a conservation of time and energy, and the amount of kind of drive and energy you put into something is what you're going to get out of it. And it turns out it's really hard to build a multi-billion dollar company. Otherwise, everyone would do it.
Right.
I respect that. And everyone does want the shortcut and everyone wants to be there faster, but they want to do that without maybe putting in the hard work and without figuring it out. And there's not an easy button, that you can just press and and you're there. So
I had to you have to die to this subconscious belief that there is a shortcut or a hack or a way around that principle that you just described. Because there have been times where I'll find myself fighting against that. And I'm like, man, just accept it, believe it, and then build a strategy accordingly with the assumption that it's just you have to put the work in long enough to see those compound returns. So that's awesome.
I think a lot of people get there, right? They get there when they're 40. They're like, okay, I kind of get how it goes. And they put it in the hard work, but they wasted all that time. You know who the most successful people are? It's the people that just started early and just accepted it and said, I'm going to start putting in the work because it compounds. And that starts to compound. So I'm just going to put in the hard work now. And it's going to be 10 years of hard work, but it's going to be worth it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right. What has been one of the best resources in your business development?
I think there's no replacement for. There's all sorts of learning. Like we keep up with like all the marketplace blogs, and we've got, some of our investors are, the CEO of DoorDash is invested in our company, and the first CEO of Uber is invested in our company, and like they can be great sounding boards. And keeping up on real estate trends, like love reading the Wall Street Journal. It's hands down one of the best resources out there. I think it's better than like 90% of the blogs that are out there. But with all of those resources that can teach you stuff, there's no substitute than working on a problem that you're just not qualified to work on. And again, back to this kind of work thing, doing something that you're scared to do, you will learn so much in the process by just doing it and failing.
Yeah.
And so that's the best learning resource, is just start doing it even though you're not qualified.
Nothing clarifies the senses like a little bit of anxiety and fear, you know? No, I that's great advice, man. That's great advice. Kind of in line with what we were talking about. So let's tie it all together. Joseph, how can people find out, follow your guys' success as a company, you personally? Obviously, the URL is pretty easy to find if they want to go there to get onboarded and figure out, like, is my property even a qualified, strategy for this? What's the best way for people to get in touch?
Yeah, so if you've got a residential property or a small business, it's just going to neighbor.com, or like we're the number one ranked storage app on the App Store. If you just search Neighbor or Boat Storage or whatever, we'll pop up on the App Store, and just walk through our flow. If you're a big portfolio, like if you own 10 properties plus or 500 properties, then I'd reach out to our business development team. You can reach out to me personally on LinkedIn or whatever. Joseph@neighbor.com is my email. You can reach out to our head of business development, Sky Pove, sky@neighbor.com, SKYE@neighbor.com directly. He'll get you sorted into, if you're multifamily, he'll get you set up with our multifamily team. If you're office, with our office team. If you're retail, with our retail team. And he'll get you onboarded, and we'll give you all sorts of like enterprise tools. So we've got something for everyone. Again, the easiest thing to do is just go to neighbor.com. You can have your space listed in like 10 to 15 minutes.
Wow.
And have someone have revenue coming in the door within a matter of weeks.
Not neighborwithay.com, just how you spell it.
Straight up
neighbor.com. That's awesome, man. Well, Joseph, thank you for taking time today. It's kind of blowing my mind that it's so easy to get in touch with somebody directly at your company for as big as you are.
Yeah, I mean, we find the best way is to make people comfortable reaching out, and we've got a big team. So like, we will quickly get you to the right person, and that's our job as a company, is to get customers what they need as fast as possible. Even if we're not helping them directly, we will get you in front of the right person who can be like your day-to-day go-to, who you can email at any time, and they'll help you get set up.
Awesome.
Yeah,
we'll put all these things in the show notes. Go check out neighbor.com and see how you can make more money with your properties. As always, excited that you joined us on another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. If this episode added to your tool belt or left you feeling inspired, go ahead and share it with a friend. Stay tuned every Tuesday for new episodes. And if you want to get in touch with us, go to our LinkedIn or Facebook profiles and shoot us a message. Move farther, reach higher, and grow deeper. See you next time.